I'm sorry, I completely forgot to review this one for you guys. I'm actually really sorry about that. I've had so many things going on and so many things that I've been working on. It totally slipped my mind. But I did want to talk about this one because ever since I reviewed Megamind, I've gotten requests or recommendations that I watch this movie and review it, because everybody seemed to be saying the same thing. I reviewed Megamind and I said that it was the best that DreamWorks had done so far. And tons of people wrote in and tons of people recommended this movie. And they all basically said that, Megamind was good, glad you liked it, but if you're saying that it's the best that DreamWorks has ever done, it could only mean that you haven't seen How to Train Your Dragon yet. And that was true in two ways. The first way is that I hadn't seen How to Train Your Dragon yet, and the second is that, yes, the only way anyone could say that that was the best DreamWorks movie is if they hadn't seen this one, because this was something else. Megamind was good for a DreamWorks movie. It made me think, wow, DreamWorks' films are really getting a lot better. This is in a different league than the DreamWorks movie. This feels like something completely different. I'm actually very surprised that this even came out of that studio, because it feels like it belongs somewhere else. It feels more like a Disney movie than it does a DreamWorks movie. As much as I loved Megamind and as much as I had so much fun with it and I loved the idea, there was a lot in that movie where they were just trying to get laughs. And they did. There's nothing wrong with that. This movie isn't just trying to get laughs. This movie is really trying to tell a good and emotional story. And they do. And I didn't expect that at first, because at first I was under the impression that this was just going to be a dragon fighting movie. And I was like, okay, it's going to be an action movie with some humor mixed in there. The main kid in particular is pretty funny, and we'll probably just have an entertaining film. But then as the film went on, I started to realize that there was a lot more going on there. There are three pieces of this movie that are telling individual stories that culminate into one good film. This is a dragon fighting story, but it's also a story about a community of people who are headstrong and can't let go of their prejudice. And that plays out straight through till the end, until they learn something about prejudice and learn something about themselves, and learn about whether or not, what is it that we're fighting for here? Are we fighting because we know what we're fighting about, or are we fighting because it's all we've ever done? And the third piece to this is the thing that I loved the most, which is that this is a father and son story. And for one reason or another, there aren't very many of those. I mean, I could probably think of about one or two off the top of my head right now. Okay, I guess I can't. I know they're out there, but people usually don't like doing those, and I don't know why. And father-daughter stories are even more rare. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is The Little Mermaid, which that aspect kind of reminded me of this, but I think this did it a little better, because in The Little Mermaid, Ariel was clearly right and Triton was clearly wrong. Here, it's a little bit more complicated. In The Little Mermaid, Triton understood exactly who Ariel was. She's just a headstrong teenager and he needs to keep her in line. And later he realizes that, maybe he did have a prejudice against the humans and maybe she was somewhat right after all. In this one, the father in this film doesn't really understand the son very well, and he loves the hell out of him, but the son is just so different than what he thinks a Viking should be. So he's kind of struggling between trying to raise him to be the best Viking that he can be, and also trying to understand him as a person. And that was the part of this film that I really loved the most, because that conflict was just constantly there playing between the two. And on the other side of that coin, the son, in a way, he wants to be the best Viking that he can be, but he doesn't really understand the Vikings very well. He's not a violent person, he's not particularly strong, and as he gets to understand the dragons and what they're all about, he finds a non-violent way of dealing with them, which really blows the Vikings' mind. They can't understand that at all. They only understand violence until the end. That was really what sold me on this movie. This is a completely different movie than anything that DreamWorks has ever done. And like I said, Megamind, for as good as it was clearly a DreamWorks movie. It was just a DreamWorks movie done better. This is in a different league altogether. This was something that was really fantastic. The bond between the kid and the dragon was absolutely wonderful, especially considering that you have a character that he's playing off that can't speak. When you do mute characters, it's really, really hard because you have to get their emotions and their motivations across in other ways. And they do that fantastically here. Huge props to the animation department for making that dragon a great character that really comes through without talking. Very hard to do. Off the top of my head, E.T. was done well, mute character, until the end anyway. Wall-E, obviously, mute character, which came through very, very well through ways other than speech. The dragon in this was so well done in that way. My only major, I think the only deficiency that this movie has is the supporting kid human characters. They weren't really that well developed, and I was never really interested in them, and they try to throw in a female love interest for the kid that never really materialized as well as it could. I think they were so focused on all the aspects of the film that I mentioned that they didn't really spend as much time and detail on that as they could have. And if I were them, I might have even just kind of cut that out. I mean, what's the point of putting a romance in there if you're not going to do anything with it? If it's just to have it there, you don't need it. It's kind of like, Simba and Nala and the Lion King. This was not nearly that bad or that rushed, but it still kind of has that problem. I think that was the only problem that I really had with this film. And, if you're getting everything else right, that doesn't really matter very much. This is a fantastic movie. I would recommend it to anybody that just loves movies. I mean, even if you don't have a kid, this movie will be great for you. I understand that this is based on a book series, and it made me want to read the books, and that right there should tell you how good this is. Another thing that indicates how good this movie is that, like I said, I forgot that I was going to review it for you guys in the first place. I saw this movie months ago. I've only seen it once, and I still remember it. That's always a good sign. Finally, there's one thing that happens at the end that I didn't see coming, but it was so wonderful the way they did it. Where basically the dragon in the beginning, right at the beginning of the film, ends up having a bit of a handicap with regard to something that happens to his tail, and they fix that for him. And at the end of the film, the kid has the same handicap, and they're both the same in that. That really kind of blew me away. I loved that. That was so well done. I could have cried. That was amazing. There are a lot of amazing aspects of this film. And to say that this is the best that DreamWorks has done is even kind of an understatement, because this would be good for any studio. I don't know what's going on over at DreamWorks, whether it's due to a regime change or a philosophy change or what's happening, but their movies are getting better. And it's making it so that I would go into a DreamWorks film not really expecting just cheap entertainment, which I think that by and large they have been producing in the past. This is by far the best they have done, and I thank everyone who recommended this for me, because it was an experience that I really loved, and I think everyone else would love it too. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it, and if you have seen it, you should already know what I'm talking about. Thank you for all your recommendations, because I really enjoyed this one a lot.